The battered door slammed in Olivia Sawyer's face as the February wind howled across the Colorado plains, cutting through her thin cotton dress like it wasn't even there. For the third night this week, her husband Thomas had locked her out of their homestead, punishment for a stew that had gone cold while she tended to their sick mare in the stable. "Please, Thomas," Olivia called, her knuckles reddened from pounding on the wooden door. "It's freezing tonight." "I'll die out here." No answer came except for the cruel whistle of wind between the cabin's rough-hewn logs. At 22, Olivia had never imagined her life would come to this, married 4 years to a man whose gentle courtship had transformed into drunken rages and calculated cruelty once the wedding vows were spoken. She wrapped her arms around herself, teeth chattering as she considered her options. The nearest neighbor was 3 miles away, and in the darkness, with temperatures dropping, such a journey could easily become fatal. Olivia stumbled toward the small stable, hoping to find warmth among the animals. The family's aging mare and 2 goats wouldn't provide much heat, but it would be better than standing exposed to the elements. As she pushed open the stable door, her hands nearly numb, she was startled by the soft glow of a lantern. "Who's there?" came a deep voice from inside. Startled, Olivia nearly fell backward. I'm sorry, this is my stable. I didn't know anyone was here." A tall figure rose from where he'd been sitting on a hay bale. The man stepped into the light, revealing a weathered face that Olivia guessed to be around 30 years of age. His clothes were trail-worn but clean, and the gun at his hip was holstered a small comfort. "Madam," he said, removing his hat, "I apologize for the intrusion. Name's Jack Caldwell. I was passing through and saw your stable. With the storm coming, I thought to ask permission to shelter my horse, but nobody answered at the house." Olivia hugged herself tighter, embarrassment heating her cheeks despite the cold. "My husband, he's indisposed." The stranger Jack studied her for a long moment, his eyes taking in her thin dress, the lack of a coat, and the way she trembled from the cold. "You're freezing," he said, shrugging off his heavy duster coat and stepping forward. "Here, take this. I couldn't possibly, please." He draped it around her shoulders before she could finish protesting. The coat carried his warmth and the scent of leather, tobacco, and open prairie. "Thank you," she whispered, pulling it tighter. Jack glanced toward the darkened house, then back to Olivia's face, which was illuminated by the lantern light. A bruise she tried to hide with her hair became visible when she turned her head. "Your husband lock you out here?" he asked directly, his voice low and controlled. Olivia looked away. "It's nothing. He'll let me back in by morning." "This happen often?" Her silence answered his question more thoroughly than words could have. Jack's jaw tightened. "Madam, I don't mean to overstep, but no woman should be sleeping in a stable in February while her husband's warm inside." "Not in my book. It's just how things are," Olivia replied, moving toward a pile of hay. "I'll be fine here for the night." Jack watched her for a moment, then nodded once. "Well then, if you don't mind sharing the stable, I'd appreciate staying till morning." "My horse could use the rest, and I've been riding hard for days." "Of course," Olivia said quietly. "It's the least I can offer after you lent me your coat." Jack retrieved a bedroll from his saddle and laid it out for her on the cleanest patch of hay he could find. "Take this." "I've slept on worse than stable floors many times." "I couldn't, please," he interrupted. "My mama would haunt me from her grave if she knew I let a lady sleep on bare hay while I had a bedroll." Too exhausted and cold to argue further, Olivia accepted his kindness. As she settled in, Jack built a small, controlled fire in an old metal bucket, just enough to provide some warmth without risking the stable. "Where are you headed?" Olivia asked, watching him tend the tiny flames. "Nowhere particular. Everywhere in general," he replied with a hint of a smile. "Been working my way north from Texas. Was a ranch hand for a spell, then did some cattle driving. Thought I might try my luck at the silver mines up in the mountains." "You don't sound like a drifter," Olivia observed. Jack looked up, his eyes reflecting the firelight. "What does a drifter sound like, Mrs. Sawyer?" "Olivia Sawyer." She tugged the coat tighter. "Drifters don't usually have such proper speech or such good manners," he chuckled softly. "Had a school teacher for a mother. She'd box my ears if I spoke poorly, even now." His expression sobered. "Get some sleep, Mrs. Sawyer. Morning comes early. Despite her circumstances, Olivia felt safer than she had in months. As she drifted off to sleep, she wondered what twist of fate had sent this stranger to her stable on this of all nights. Morning arrived with pale light filtering through the stable's wooden slats. Olivia woke to find Jack already awake, tending to his horse and her mare with equal care. "Good morning," he said when he noticed her stirring. "Hope you slept well as could be expected." "Better than I would have outside," she replied, sitting up. She folded his coat neatly and held it out. "Thank you for this." He accepted it with a nod. "I made some coffee if you'd like some." He gestured to a small pot resting near the embers of last night's fire. The smell of fresh coffee was a luxury Olivia rarely enjoyed, as Thomas kept such items for himself. She accepted gratefully, wrapping her cold fingers around the tin cup Jack offered. As they shared this simple breakfast, shouts erupted from the direction of the house. Thomas Sawyer's bulky figure appeared in the doorway, his face contorted with rage when he spotted Olivia in the stable. "Who the hell is that?" he bellowed, stumbling slightly as he stormed toward them. The smell of whiskey preceded him like a foul cloud. Jack stood smoothly, positioning himself between Olivia and her approaching husband. "Name's Jack Caldwell, sir. Just a traveler who needed shelter for the night. Your wife was kind enough to allow me use of your stable." Thomas's bloodshot eyes darted between them suspiciously. "That right. And what else was my wife kind enough to offer you?" Olivia felt her face burn with humiliation. "Thomas, please shut your mouth," Thomas snapped. "Get back to the house." Now, Jack's expression remained neutral, but Olivia noticed how his hand drifted closer to his holstered gun. "Mr. Sawyer, I think you should speak more respectfully to your wife." Thomas laughed coldly. "You think you can tell me how to speak in my own home? To my own wife, I think," Jack said evenly, "that leaving a woman outside to freeze isn't the mark of a man who deserves much respect himself." Thomas's face darkened. "Get off my property, now, and count yourself lucky I don't put a bullet in you for trespassing." Jack didn't move. "I'll be on my way once I know the lady is safe." "The lady is my wife," Thomas spat. "And what happens between us is none of your concern." Olivia stepped forward, placing a trembling hand on Jack's arm. "It's all right, Mr. Caldwell. You should go. I'll be fine." Jack turned to her, his eyes searching hers. Whatever he saw there made his jaw clench, but he gave a short nod. "If that's what you want." "It is," she whispered, though everything in her wanted to beg him to stay. Jack gathered his belongings with deliberate slowness, tightening his horse's saddle and securing his pack. All the while, Thomas stood glaring, his hands balled into fists at his sides. Before mounting his horse, Jack turned to Olivia. "Thank you for your hospitality, Mrs. Sawyer." He reached into his pocket and handed her something discreetly. "For the coffee," he said, loud enough for Thomas to hear. Olivia closed her fingers around the small object, a folded piece of paper. As Jack rode away, Thomas grabbed her arm roughly. "Get inside. Now." The next few hours passed in a blur of accusations and threats. Thomas ransacked the stable, convinced that something improper had occurred between his wife and the stranger. Finding nothing to support his suspicions only fueled his anger. By midday, exhausted from his tirade and the effects of last night's whiskey, he collapsed into a fitful sleep on their bed. Only then did Olivia dare to unfold the paper Jack had pressed into her hand. Written in neat, precise letters was a simple message. "I'll camp by Clearwater Creek for 3 days. If you need help, find me there." Olivia stared at the note, her hands shaking. The thought of leaving was both terrifying and exhilarating. She had nowhere to go, no family who would take her in. Her parents had died 2 years ago, and her only sister lived in Boston, too far to reach without money or means of transport. But staying meant enduring more nights locked outside, more bruises to hide, more fear. That evening, Thomas woke in a foul mood. He demanded dinner, criticized every aspect of the simple stew Olivia prepared, then announced he was heading to town. "Don't wait up," he growled, grabbing his hat. "And don't think about letting any more strangers into my stable." After he left, Olivia moved through the small cabin like a ghost, touching objects that had been part of her daily life for 4 years. The wedding quilt her mother had made, the small wooden box containing her few pieces of jewelry, the Bible that had belonged to her grandmother. Decision crystallizing, Olivia gathered essential items, a change of clothes, her mother's locket, what little money she had managed to hide from Thomas over the years. She couldn't take much without him noticing, but she couldn't stay another night. By the time darkness fell, Olivia had saddled the mare and secured her small bundle of belongings. With a last look at the cabin that had been both home and prison, she urged the horse toward Clearwater Creek, her heart pounding with fear and desperate hope. The journey to the creek was slow in the darkness. Olivia kept the mare at a steady walk, afraid of injuring the animal on the uneven terrain. It took nearly 2 hours to reach the creek's edge, and she began to worry that she wouldn't be able to find Jack's camp. Then she saw it, the faint orange glow of a campfire reflected on the water. Olivia approached cautiously, suddenly uncertain. What if Jack turned her away? What if he wasn't the honorable man he seemed? Who's there? Jack's voice called out, and Olivia heard the distinctive click of a gun being cocked. "It's Olivia Sawyer," she called back, her voice thin with nerves. Silence, then the sound of movement. Jack appeared at the edge of the firelight, lowering his gun when he saw her. "Mrs. Sawyer," he said, relief evident in his tone. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "I wasn't sure either," she admitted, dismounting slowly. Her legs felt weak beneath her. Jack stepped forward to take the mare's reins. "Are you all right? Did he hurt you?" Olivia shook her head. "No more than usual." "He went to town. He won't know I'm gone until morning." Jack nodded, leading both her mare and his own horse to a spot where they could graze. "Come sit by the fire. You look half frozen again." Olivia sank down gratefully near the flames. "I don't know what to do now," she confessed, staring into the fire. "I just knew I couldn't stay there another night." "You did the right thing," Jack said, settling across from her. He poured coffee from a pot nestled in the embers and handed her a cup. "No one deserves to be treated that way." "Where will I go?" Olivia asked, more to herself than to him. "I have no family nearby, very little money." Jack was quiet for a long moment. "I'm headed to a town called Silverton. Friend of mine runs a hotel there, needs help managing it. It's honest work, and she'd give you room and board." Olivia looked up at him, searching his face for any sign of deception. "Why would you help me like this? You don't know me." "I know enough," he replied. "I know you didn't deserve what was happening to you, and I know that sometimes folks just need a chance to start over." They talked long into the night, Olivia gradually sharing pieces of her story, how she'd met Thomas when she was 18, how charming he had been during their courtship, how quickly things had changed after they wed. Jack listened without judgment, occasionally adding wood to the fire or refilling their coffee cups. In turn, he told her about growing up in Virginia, losing his family's farm after the war, his years working ranches across the West. He spoke of his dream to save enough to buy his own small spread someday, a place where he could raise horses. "We should try to sleep," Jack finally said as the fire burned low. "We'll need to move on at first light. Your husband might come looking once he discovers you're gone." Olivia nodded, suddenly exhausted. Jack offered her his bedroll again and, despite her protests, insisted on sleeping with just his coat for warmth. "Jack," she said softly as he settled a few feet away from her, "thank you for everything." "You're welcome, Olivia," he replied, using her first name for the first time. "Now get some sleep. You'll sleep inside from now on, I promise you that." Those words, spoken with such quiet certainty, followed Olivia into her dreams that for the first time in years weren't filled with fear. Dawn broke cold and clear. Jack was already awake, preparing a simple breakfast of hardtack and jerky when Olivia opened her eyes. "Good morning," he said, offering her a tin plate. "We should eat quickly and get moving. I don't like the idea of your husband tracking us." Olivia nodded, accepting the food gratefully. "He's a poor tracker, but he's stubborn, and when he drinks, he gets mean." They ate in companionable silence, then quickly packed up camp. As Jack helped Olivia mount her mare, he paused, looking up at her with serious eyes. "Olivia, I want you to know that I'm not expecting anything in return for helping you. When we reach Silverton, you'll be free to make your own choices. My friend, her name's Sarah Miller, she'll give you work and a safe place to stay. What happens after that is entirely up to you." Touched by his consideration, Olivia nodded. "Thank you, but I hope we might remain friends at least." A smile creased Jack's weathered face. I'd like that very much. They rode west, keeping to less traveled trails. Jack set a steady pace, careful not to exhaust their horses but mindful of the need to put distance between them and the Sawyer homestead. He pointed out landmarks as they traveled, teaching Olivia how to read the land. See those clouds gathering over the mountains? He asked mid-morning, pointing to the distant peaks. Snow by nightfall. We'll need to find better shelter than my tent. Will we make it to town before then? Jack shook his head. Not to Silverton, but there's a way station about 15 miles ahead. We can stay there tonight, continue on tomorrow. As they rode, Olivia felt a strange lightness growing within her. Despite the uncertainty of her future, despite the fear of Thomas possibly pursuing her, she felt more alive than she had in years. The vast Colorado landscape spread around them in rugged beauty, and for the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a life where she might be free. By late afternoon, dark clouds had indeed gathered, and the temperature dropped sharply. Jack pushed them a bit faster, and soon Olivia spotted a collection of buildings nestled in a small valley ahead. Thornton's Station, Jack explained as they approached. Old Jeb Thornton runs it. Provides rooms, meals, and fresh horses for travelers. Not the fanciest place, but it's clean and warm. The station consisted of a main building, a large stable, and several smaller outbuildings. Smoke curled invitingly from the chimney of the main structure. As they dismounted, an older man with a bushy white beard emerged from the stable. "Jack Caldwell, as I live and breathe," the man called out, limping slightly as he approached. "Thought you'd be halfway to California by now," Jack grinned, clasping the man's hand warmly. "Changed my plans, Jeb." Heading to Silverton instead, he turned to include Olivia. "This is Mrs. Olivia Sawyer. Olivia, this is Jebediah Thornton, ornery old cuss and the finest station keeper in Colorado." Jeb tipped his hat to Olivia. "Madam, any friend of Jack's is welcome here." If he noticed the absence of a wedding ring on her finger, or questioned why a married woman was traveling alone with Jack, he gave no indication. "Thank you, Mr. Thornton," Olivia replied. "We're grateful for your hospitality, especially with the weather turning." "Come on inside," Jeb said. "My daughter-in-law's got stew on, and there's fresh bread. I'll have my boy take care of your horses." The main building was warm and surprisingly cozy inside. A large stone fireplace dominated one wall, surrounded by several wooden tables. A few travelers were already seated, enjoying meals and conversation. A heavy-set woman with a kind face greeted them from behind a long counter. "Martha, this is Jack Caldwell and Mrs. Sawyer," Jeb introduced them. "They'll be needing rooms for the night." Martha smiled warmly. "We've got one room left with 2 beds, if that suits." Storms brought more travelers than usual. Olivia felt her face warm at the implication they would share a room, but before she could respond, Jack spoke up. "I'll take a spot in the stable if you've got no other rooms, Martha." Mrs. Sawyer should have the room to herself. Martha nodded approvingly. "Always the gentleman, Jack, you sure? It's mighty cold in that stable." "I've slept in worse," he assured her. After a hearty meal of venison stew and fresh bread, Olivia found herself sitting by the fire with Jack, listening as he and Jeb exchanged stories. The storm had arrived in full force, snow swirling outside the windows and wind howling down the chimney. "How long have you known Jack?" Olivia asked Jeb during a lull in the conversation. "Going on 6 years now," the older man replied. "First time he came through, he helped me fight off 3 outlaws trying to rob the place. Been friends ever since." Olivia glanced at Jack, who looked slightly embarrassed by the praise. "You didn't mention you were a hero," she teased gently. "Wasn't heroic," Jack countered. "Just happened to be in the right place at the right time." "Like with me," Olivia said softly. Their eyes met across the table, and something unspoken passed between them, a recognition, perhaps, that fate had brought them together for reasons neither fully understood yet. The evening progressed pleasantly, with more travelers joining the fireside gathering as the storm intensified. Someone produced a fiddle, and soon music filled the room. Watching Jack laugh at one of Jeb's jokes, his face illuminated by firelight, Olivia realized she was seeing the first glimpses of what freedom might truly feel like. Later, as Martha showed her to her room, the older woman paused at the door. That Jack Caldwell's a good man, she said quietly. Whatever trouble you're running from, and don't worry, I'm not asking you could do worse than having him on your side. Surprised by the woman's perception, Olivia merely nodded. Yes, I believe you're right. Get some rest, dear. Storm like this, you'll likely be here another day at least. Alone in the small but clean room, Olivia sat on the edge of the bed, listening to the wind outside. For the first time in 4 years, she was sleeping indoors without fear of what the night might bring. Jack's promise echoed in her mind. You'll sleep inside from now on. Sleep came easily, deeper and more peaceful than she had known in a long time. Morning brought no reprieve from the storm. Snow had piled in drifts against the buildings, and Jeb announced at breakfast that no one would be traveling that day. Roads are impassable, he declared. Best make yourselves comfortable. Martha's got plenty of food, and there's cards and checkers for those inclined. Jack found Olivia by the window watching the swirling snow. Looks like we're staying put, he said, offering her a cup of coffee. I don't mind, she replied honestly. It's nice here, safe. They spent the day in pleasant idleness. Jack taught Olivia to play chess using Jeb's handmade set, and she surprised herself by winning their third game. You're a natural strategist, Jack commented, studying the board with admiration. Or perhaps you're letting me win, she countered with a small smile. He laughed. I assure you my pride wouldn't allow that. As evening approached, more music and storytelling filled the main room. Olivia found herself sitting next to Martha, helping the woman mend some linens. How long have you been at the station? Olivia asked. 22 years, Martha replied, threading a needle with practiced ease. Came as a bride when my Henry Jeb's son took over running the place with his father. He's been gone 5 years now, influenza, but this is home. I'm sorry about your husband, Olivia said sincerely. Martha nodded her thanks. Life out here isn't easy, especially for women, but there's freedom in it too, a chance to become something different from what you might have been back east. She glanced meaningfully at Olivia. A chance to start fresh. Is it that obvious? Olivia asked quietly. Only to someone who's seen it before, Martha replied. And honey, I've seen plenty of women passing through, looking for a new beginning. She nodded toward Jack, who was helping Jeb stock the fireplace with wood. Not many are lucky enough to have a good man helping them along the way. We're just friends, Olivia insisted, feeling her cheeks warm. Martha smiled knowingly. For now, perhaps, but I've seen how he looks at you when you're not watching, and how you look at him too. Olivia had no response to that, her thoughts suddenly in turmoil. She was still legally married to Thomas, still running from that life. It was too soon to think about any kind of relationship, especially with a man she'd known only days. And yet, the storm continued through the night and into the following day, though with diminishing force. By evening, Jeb predicted they'd be able to travel by mid-morning. Roads won't be good, he warned Jack as they sat by the fire, but they'll be passable if you're careful, Jack nodded. We'll take it slow. How far to the next town? Miller's Crossing is about 20 miles southwest. Decent place to rest before pushing on to Silverton. As the travelers began drifting to their rooms for the night, Jack approached Olivia. Thought you might want to know there was a rider came through just before dark. Man asking questions about a woman traveling alone or with a stranger. Olivia's blood ran cold. Thomas, from the description, sounds like him. Jeb told him he hadn't seen anyone matching our description. He'll keep looking, Olivia said, her voice barely above a whisper. Jack's expression hardened. He won't find you. We'll leave at first light, take a different route than planned. It'll add a day to our journey, but it's safer. Unable to contain her anxiety, Olivia pressed her hands to her face. I'm sorry, I'm bringing nothing but trouble to you. Gently, Jack pulled her hands away, holding them in his own. Olivia, look at me. When she raised her eyes to his, he continued, You have nothing to apologize for, nothing. Your husband is the one in the wrong, not you. But why help me? Why risk yourself this way? Something flickered in Jack's eyes, a shadow of old pain. Because once I didn't help someone who needed it. I've regretted it every day since. He squeezed her hands lightly. Get some rest. I'll keep watch tonight, make sure he doesn't circle back this way. Olivia hardly slept that night, torn between fear of Thomas finding her and a growing awareness of her feelings for Jack. Martha's words kept returning to her mind. along with the memory of Jack's hands holding hers, strong and gentle at once. By dawn, the storm had passed, leaving a crystalline world of white in its wake. True to his word, Jack had them ready to depart as the sun crested the eastern mountains. Jeb provided them with extra supplies, waving away Jack's attempt to pay. "Consider it payment for those outlaws you handled," the old man insisted. "And you," he said to Olivia, "you come back and visit when you're settled. Martha's taken a shine to you." Their new route took them through more rugged terrain, but Jack seemed to know the way with the confidence of someone who had traveled these lands extensively. They rode in comfortable silence for much of the morning, the only sound the crunch of snow beneath their horses' hooves and the occasional call of a bird. "How much farther to Miller's Crossing?" Olivia asked as they stopped to rest the horses near midday. "Should make it by nightfall if the roads stay clear," Jack replied, scanning the horizon with a practiced eye. "From there, it's another 2 days to Silverton." Olivia nodded, trying to ignore the slight pang she felt at the thought of reaching their destination. Once there, Jack would deliver her to his friend Sarah, and their paths would likely diverge. "Will you stay in Silverton?" she asked, attempting to sound casual. Jack glanced at her, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "For a while. Got some business interests there that need tending." He hesitated, then added, "And I'd like to make sure you're settled properly before moving on." "That's very kind." "It's not kindness, Olivia." Something in his tone made her look up sharply. Their eyes met, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. "I find myself reluctant to part ways with you." Before she could respond, Jack's attention snapped to something behind her. In one fluid motion, he was on his feet, hand moving to his gun. "Riders," he said tersely. "3 of them coming fast." Olivia turned, her heart hammering as she spotted the approaching horsemen. They were too distant to make out faces, but she felt it in her bones that Thomas was among them. "He must have found someone who saw us leave the station," Jack muttered. "Get on your horse. Now." They mounted quickly, Jack leading them into a dense stand of pines. "These trees will slow them down and hide our tracks in the snow. We need to reach the river up ahead. We can follow it to throw them off." Olivia urged her mare forward, following Jack's lead as they weaved through the trees. Behind them, shouts echoed. The riders had spotted them. "Jack," Olivia called fearfully, "Thomas has a rifle. He's a good shot." Jack's expression was grim. "Just keep riding, don't look back." They broke from the tree line, emerging onto a plateau that sloped down toward a rushing river. The water was swollen with snowmelt, churning angrily between ice-coated banks. "There's a crossing half a mile downstream," Jack said, pointing. "It's shallow enough to ford." Before they could make for it, a shot cracked through the air. Olivia's mare reared in panic, nearly throwing her. Jack wheeled his horse around, drawing his own gun. "Get to the crossing," he ordered. "I'll hold them here." "No, I won't leave you." "Olivia, go now." Another shot rang out, this one striking the ground near Jack's horse. The animal sidestepped nervously. Torn between fear and loyalty, Olivia hesitated only a moment longer before turning her mare toward the river crossing. As she rode, she heard more gunfire behind her, the sounds echoing across the open plateau. The river crossing appeared ahead, a stretch of shallower water where stone outcroppings created a natural ford. Olivia slowed her mare, looking back to see Jack exchanging fire with the pursuers who had stopped at the tree line. Then, to her horror, she saw Jack's horse stumble. Whether hit by a bullet or simply losing footing on the snowy ground, the animal went down hard. Jack rolled clear of the falling horse but lay momentarily stunned on the white ground, a perfect target. Without thinking, Olivia wheeled her mare around and galloped back toward him. One of the riders, Thomas, she could see now, had emerged from the trees and was advancing, rifle raised. "Jack!" She screamed, pushing her horse faster than she'd ever ridden before. Jack was on his feet now, but his gun had been lost in the fall. He stood exposed on the open plateau as Thomas took aim. Olivia reached Jack just as Thomas fired. She felt rather than heard Jack's shout as he lunged for her, pulling her from the saddle as the bullet whistled past. They tumbled into the snow together, Jack's body shielding hers. "Are you crazy?" he hissed, pulling her behind the fallen form of his horse. "I told you to go." I couldn't leave you, she gasped, heart pounding so hard she could barely hear her own words. Jack's expression softened for an instant, then hardened again as he peered over the horse's body. Thomas and one man coming this way. The third is circling around to cut off the crossing. What do we do? Jack's eyes scanned their surroundings, settling on the rushing river. The ice, he said suddenly. There's a sheet of ice extending from this bank. If we can reach it, we can use it to float downstream past the crossing. They'll expect us to use the ford. It was dangerous, perhaps suicidal, but Olivia nodded. I trust you. Jack found his gun half buried in the snow and checked that it was still functional. When I say run, head straight for that ice shelf. Don't stop, don't look back. I'll be right behind you. Olivia nodded, gathering her courage. Another shot rang out, splintering wood from the saddle of Jack's fallen horse. Now, Jack shouted, rising just enough to fire 2 quick shots toward their pursuers. Olivia ran, her boots slipping on the snowy incline as she made for the river. Behind her, she heard more gunshots, then Jack's footsteps pounding after her. The ice shelf appeared ahead, a flat expanse extending several feet from the riverbank before breaking into the churning water. She reached the edge of the river and stepped cautiously onto the ice. It held her weight, though she could feel it shift slightly beneath her feet. Keep going, Jack urged, catching up to her. To the edge, we need to push off into the current. They inched out onto the ice together, the sound of pursuit growing louder behind them. When they reached the edge where ice met open water, Jack looked at her intently. This is going to be cold and it's going to be rough. Stay with me no matter what. Before she could respond, a bullet struck the ice near their feet, sending cracks spiderwebbing outward. Jack wrapped an arm around Olivia's waist and jumped, pulling her with him onto the ice shelf as it broke free from the bank. The frigid water hit them like a physical blow, soaking their lower bodies as the ice tilted precariously. For a heart-stopping moment, Olivia thought they would capsize, but Jack shifted his weight, stabilizing their makeshift raft as the current caught it. Hold on to me, he shouted over the roar of the water. Olivia clung to him as their ice raft was swept downstream, moving rapidly away from the bank where Thomas and his companion stood firing ineffectually after them. The third man was visible now, waiting futilely at the ford they would never reach. The journey downstream was terrifying, the ice beneath them cracking and shrinking as they bounced off rocks and spun in the current. The numbing cold seeped through Olivia's clothes, and she found herself pressed against Jack, both for stability and warmth. There. Jack suddenly pointed toward the far bank, where the river widened and slowed. We need to get to shore there. Using his hands as paddles, Jack guided their diminishing ice raft toward the bank. As they neared it, he looked at Olivia with urgent eyes. We're going to have to swim the last few yards. Can you do that? Numb with cold but determined, Olivia nodded. On 3 then. 1, 2, 3, they plunged into the icy water, the shock of it driving the air from Olivia's lungs. Jack kept a firm grip on her arm as they fought the current. What seemed like an eternity later, Olivia's feet scraped bottom and they staggered onto the shore, collapsing onto the snow-covered ground. We need to move, Jack gasped, though he made no immediate attempt to rise. Find shelter, get dry before hypothermia sets in. Olivia couldn't speak, her teeth chattering too violently. Her dress and coat were soaked, already stiffening with ice in the cold air. With visible effort, Jack pushed himself to his feet and helped Olivia up. I know these parts, he said, scanning their surroundings. There's an old trapper's cabin not far from here. Can you walk? She nodded, wrapping her arms around herself in a futile attempt to conserve warmth. Jack took her hand, and they stumbled away from the river, heading into a stand of pine trees that offered some protection from the wind. The cabin appeared after a 20-minute walk that felt like hours to Olivia's frozen body. It was small and crewed little more than a one-room shelter with a stone fireplace, but it represented survival. Jack broke the simple lock with the butt of his gun and ushered Olivia inside. The interior was dusty but intact, with a small bed, a table and basic furnishings left by the previous occupant. Thank God, Jack muttered, quickly locating a stack of firewood beside the hearth. His fingers were so numb he struggled to arrange the kindling, but soon he had a small flame flickering to life. Olivia, he he said urgently, turning to where she stood shivering violently by the door. You need to get out of those wet clothes. You'll freeze to death otherwise. She nodded, understanding the necessity, but embarrassment warred with survival instinct. Jack seemed to read her thoughts. I'll step outside while you change, he said, moving toward the door. Wrap yourself in whatever blankets you can find. I'll bring in more wood. Once alone, Olivia peeled off her frozen dress, undergarments, and stockings with trembling fingers. She found a rough woolen blanket on the bed and wrapped it around herself, huddling near the growing fire. When Jack knocked a few minutes later, she called for him to enter. He returned with an armload of wood, his own clothes still soaked and his lips taking on a bluish tinge. After adding wood to the fire, he stood awkwardly, clearly needing to change himself but hesitant to mention it. You should get dry too, Olivia said quietly. I'll turn my back. Jack nodded gratefully. Olivia faced the fire, listening to the sounds of wet clothing being removed. She tried not to think about the fact that they were both nearly naked in this small cabin, tried to focus instead on the warmth slowly returning to her extremities. You can turn around now, Jack said after a few minutes. He had wrapped a second blanket around his waist, leaving his chest bare. Olivia couldn't help noticing the scars that marked his torso, one that looked like a bullet wound near his shoulder, another long slash across his ribs. Jack hung their wet clothes on chairs positioned near the fire, then set about searching the cabin's meager supplies. To Olivia's surprise, he found a few basics: coffee, some jerky, and a pot for melting snow into water. Trappers keep their cabins stocked for emergencies, he explained, setting the pot of snow near the fire. Never know when you might need shelter. As the cabin slowly warmed and they sipped hot coffee, the reality of their situation began to sink in. We lost the horses, Olivia said, staring into the fire. All our supplies, Jack nodded. Thomas will be searching for us, but he'll expect us to head for Miller's Crossing or back toward the station. We're safer here for now. For how long? A day, maybe two. Long enough for our clothes to dry and for us to rest. Then we'll head cross-country to Silverton. It's farther on foot, but we can avoid the main trails. Olivia shivered, though not entirely from cold now. I've put you in such danger. I should never have. Stop, Jack interrupted firmly. This was my choice, Olivia. I knew what I was getting into when I offered to help you. But why? She pressed, needing to understand. You mentioned regret before that you once didn't help someone. Who was it? Jack was silent for so long that Olivia thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, almost a whisper. My sister, Caroline. She married too young to a man named Edward Blacksmith. He seemed decent at first, but after the wedding, he paused, his jaw tightening. He started hitting her. I saw the bruises when I visited, but she made excuses. Said she was clumsy, that she'd fallen. Olivia remained silent, recognizing the familiar pattern. I knew deep down what was happening, Jack continued, but I didn't push, didn't want to interfere in her marriage. Then one night, during a blizzard much like the one we just had, Edward locked her out of their house. She froze to death on their porch, just 50 feet from where he sat drinking by the fire. Oh, Jack, Olivia whispered, tears filling her eyes. I'm so sorry. I should have done something sooner, should have gotten her away from him. Jack's eyes reflected the firelight, haunted by old pain. When I saw you in that stable, shivering from the cold because your husband had locked you out, it was like seeing Caroline all over again. I couldn't fail another woman that way. Without thinking, Olivia reached across the space between them, taking his hand in hers. You didn't fail me. You saved me. Their eyes met, and something shifted between them, a connection deepening beyond gratitude or circumstance. Jack's fingers tightened around hers, and for a moment, Olivia thought he might pull her closer. Instead, he gently released her hand. We should try to get some sleep, he said, his voice rougher than before. You take the bed, I'll keep watch by the fire. Despite her exhaustion, sleep eluded Olivia for some time. She lay on the narrow bed, listening to Jack add wood to the fire, his silhouette outlined against the flames. She thought about Thomas, about the life she'd left behind, and about Jack, a man who had risked everything to help a stranger because he couldn't bear to see history repeat itself. Sometime in the night, she woke to find the cabin cold, the fire burned down to embers. Jack was slumped against the wall near the hearth, shivering in his sleep. Without hesitation, Olivia rose, bringing her blanket with her. "Jack," she whispered, touching his shoulder gently, "you're freezing, come to the bed." He blinked awake, disoriented. "I'm fine here, you need your rest." "Don't be stubborn," she insisted. "The bed's small but big enough for both of us. We'll stay warmer together." Too cold to argue further, Jack followed her to the narrow bed. They lay side by side, sharing both blankets, their bodies not quite touching but close enough to feel each other's warmth. "Thank you," Jack murmured as sleep began to reclaim him, "for coming back for me at the river. No one's done something like that for me before." Olivia smiled in the darkness. "We take care of each other now, that's what friends do." "Friends," Jack repeated softly, the word hanging in the air between them as they drifted into sleep. Morning brought pale sunshine and the realization that their clothes, though still damp in places, were wearable again. They dressed in awkward silence, the intimacy of the night giving way to the practicalities of survival. Jack ventured outside briefly, returning with a grim report. "Snow's deep but passable. No sign of pursuit, but we should move on as soon as possible. I'm guessing Thomas and his men either think we drowned in the river or they've gone to check Miller's Crossing." "How far is Silverton on foot?" Olivia asked, folding the blankets neatly and placing them on the bed. 3 days, maybe 4 in these conditions. "There's a small settlement called Pine Hollow about a day's walk from here. We might be able to acquire horses there." They gathered what supplies they could from the cabin: a small knife, a tin cup, a worn but serviceable coat Jack found hanging on a peg that would at least give Olivia an extra layer against the cold. Before leaving, Jack left a few coins on the table. "For what we used," he explained when Olivia questioned him. "Trapper code, you take what you need, but you always pay if you can." Their journey through the snow-covered wilderness was arduous but beautiful. Jack led the way, breaking trail through the deeper drifts, occasionally offering Olivia his hand over particularly difficult terrain. They spoke little, saving their breath for the exertion of walking, but the silence between them was comfortable, the silence of people who no longer need constant words to feel connected. By midday, they stopped in a sheltered clearing to rest and share the meager rations Jack had taken from the cabin. As they sat side by side on a fallen log, Olivia found herself studying Jack's profile, the strong line of his jaw, now covered with several days' growth of beard, the small scar near his right eyebrow, the way his eyes crinkled slightly at the corners when he squinted into the distance. "What are you thinking?" he asked, catching her gaze. Olivia considered deflecting but decided on honesty instead. "I was thinking how strange life is. A week ago, I was locked in a miserable existence, believing there was no escape. Now I'm here, in the middle of the wilderness with a man I barely know, running from my husband, and somehow I feel freer than I have in years." Jack smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his weathered face. "Freedom suits you, does it?" "Yes. There's a light in your eyes that wasn't there when I first met you." They continued onward, as afternoon stretched toward evening. The terrain became more challenging, with steep inclines that left them breathless and aching. Olivia's city-bred body protested the unaccustomed exertion, but she pushed forward without complaint, determined not to slow their progress. As dusk approached, Jack led them to a rocky overhang that provided some shelter from the wind. "We'll stop here for the night," he said, surveying the natural alcove. "Not as good as the cabin, but it'll keep the worst of the weather off us." They gathered pine boughs to create a floor that would insulate them from the cold ground. Then Jack built a small fire at the entrance of their shelter. Their dinner consisted of the last of the jerky and melted snow. "Tomorrow we should reach Pine Hollow by nightfall," Jack said, feeding small sticks into the flames. "Assuming the weather holds." Olivia huddled closer to the fire, trying not to show how cold she was despite the extra coat. Jack noticed anyway and moved to sit beside her, sharing his body heat without comment. "Tell me about Silverton," she requested, seeking distraction from the cold. "And your friend Sarah who runs the hotel." "Silverton's a mining town, mostly silver as the name suggests. It's rough in parts, but there's a decent community forming, families settling, businesses opening. Not just saloons and brothels like some boom towns. Jack poked at the fire, sending sparks spiraling upward. Sarah Miller was my brother's widow. After he died in the war, she headed west, determined to make a new life. Bought a rundown hotel with the little money she had and turned it into a respectable establishment. She's a remarkable woman, tough, fair, and kind-hearted beneath her businesslike exterior. She sounds wonderful, Olivia said, genuinely impressed. And you think she'll hire me? She's been looking for someone to help manage the place for months. Says she needs another woman with good sense, not just girls to clean rooms and serve meals. Jack glanced at Olivia. You'd be perfect for it. I don't have much experience running a business. You managed a household, didn't you? Kept accounts, planned meals, handled problems as they arose. When Olivia nodded, Jack continued, That's most of what's needed. The rest Sarah can teach you. They fell silent, watching the fire's hypnotic dance. Without the distraction of conversation, Olivia became acutely aware of Jack's proximity, the solid warmth of his shoulder against hers, the rhythmic sound of his breathing. Jack, she said softly, staring into the flames, what will you do? After we reach Silverton, he was quiet for a moment. I have some business there, investments in a few mining ventures that need attention. After that, he hesitated. I haven't decided. Olivia wanted to ask if his plans might include staying in Silverton, if he might consider. What? What was she hoping for? Her marriage to Thomas wasn't legally ended, though she'd never return to him. And even if she were free, what right did she have to expect anything from Jack? He had already done far more than most would. I should check our perimeter, Jack said abruptly, rising to his feet. Make sure we haven't been followed. While he was gone, Olivia arranged their pine bough bed, making it as comfortable as possible. Unlike at the cabin, they had no choice but to share their sleeping space. Tonight the alternative was freezing in the bitter mountain cold. When Jack returned, he found Olivia already lying on the pine boughs, wrapped in the trapper's coat with her own damp ones spread over her like a blanket. Without comment, he added more wood to the fire, then settled beside her, careful to maintain a small space between them. Jack, Olivia whispered into the darkness, would you mind? Could you move closer? I'm still so cold. There was a moment's hesitation before she felt him shift, closing the gap between them. His arm tentatively draped over her waist, his chest warm against her back. Better, he asked, his voice low near her ear. Yes, she answered, relaxing into his embrace. Thank you. As they lay together under the starry Colorado sky, Olivia realized something fundamental had changed within her. The woman who had lived in fear of Thomas Sawyer's moods seemed like a stranger now, someone she had once been, but would never be again. Whatever the future held, she would face it on her own terms. With that thought warming her more effectively than the fire, Olivia drifted into sleep, secure in Jack's protective embrace. Dawn broke clear and cold. Olivia woke to find herself still enfolded in Jack's arms, his steady breathing warm against her neck. For a moment, she remained perfectly still, reluctant to break the peaceful connection between them. Eventually, the practical needs of the day intruded. They rose, sharing the last of their water and preparing to continue their journey. Neither mentioned the intimacy of the night, though something had undeniably shifted in their relationship. The day's travel was grueling, taking them through increasingly rugged terrain as they sought to avoid the main trails where Thomas might be searching. By mid-afternoon, fatigue had set in, and Olivia struggled to keep pace with Jack's longer strides. We can rest if you need to, he offered, noticing her labored breathing. Olivia shook her head stubbornly. I'm fine, we should keep moving. Jack studied her face for a moment, then nodded. Pine Hollow should be just over that ridge ahead. Another hour or so. They pushed onward, Olivia gritting her teeth against the burning in her legs and lungs. Just when she thought she couldn't take another step, they crested a final hill, and the settlement came into view below them, a collection of perhaps 20 buildings nestled in a small valley. We made it, she gasped, relief flooding through her. Jack smiled, genuine pride in his expression. You're stronger than you know, Olivia Sawyer. Pine Hollow proved to be primarily a logging settlement, with a small general store, a blacksmith, and a rustic in serving the men who worked in the surrounding forests. Jack led Olivia directly to the inn, a two-story wooden structure with smoke curling invitingly from its chimney. Inside, they found a warm common room with several rough-hewn tables and a long bar along one wall. A heavy-set man with a thick beard looked up from polishing glasses as they entered. "Afternoon," he greeted them. "Don't get many travelers this time of year, especially on foot." "Had some trouble with our horses," Jack explained smoothly. "Name's Jack Caldwell. This is my wife, Olivia." Olivia managed to hide her surprise at Jack's introduction, understanding the protection it offered. A married woman traveling with her husband would raise far fewer questions than other possible scenarios. "Owen Miller," the innkeeper replied. "Looking for rooms?" "Just one," Jack answered. "And a hot meal if you've got it. Also hoping to buy or rent horses to continue our journey tomorrow." Owen nodded. "Can help with room and meals. For horses, you'll want to talk to Silas at the livery. He might have a pair to sell, though they won't be fancy stock." After settling the arrangements, Owen showed them to a small but clean room on the second floor. Once alone, Olivia turned to Jack, eyebrow raised. "Wife?" she questioned softly, mindful of how sound might carry through the thin walls. Jack had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "Seemed the simplest explanation. I hope you don't mind." "No," she replied honestly. "It's safer that way." "I just wasn't expecting it." They washed away the grime of travel using the basin of warm water Owen had provided, then went downstairs for what proved to be a hearty meal of venison stew and fresh bread. The common room had filled with loggers returning from their day's work, creating enough noise and activity that Jack and Olivia could talk without fear of being overheard. "I'll go see about horses after we eat," Jack said, breaking off a piece of bread. "With luck, we can leave at first light." Olivia nodded, suddenly hesitant to voice the question that had been growing in her mind throughout the day. Finally, she gathered her courage. "Jack, when we reach Silverton, what happens then? Between us, I mean." He set down his spoon, meeting her gaze directly. "What would you like to happen, Olivia?" The simple question caught her off guard. What did she want? She barely knew this man, and yet she trusted him more completely than anyone she'd ever known. The connection between them had grown so rapidly, so intensely, that it frightened her and exhilarated her. "I don't know," she admitted. "I'm still married, legally at least, and I've barely begun to understand what freedom might mean for me." Jack nodded, no disappointment or judgment visible in his expression. "Then we don't need to decide anything now. When we reach Silverton, you'll have safe work and a place to live. You can take all the time you need to determine your own path forward. And you'll stay, for a while at least." Something softened in his eyes. "Yes, for as long as you want me to." Their meal completed, Jack went to negotiate for horses while Olivia returned to their room. She stood by the window, watching the activity in the settlement's main street as dusk gathered. Men moved between buildings. Lights appeared in windows. Smoke rose from chimneys into the darkening sky, ordinary life continuing as it always did, unchanged by the personal drama unfolding in her own existence. A knock at the door startled her from her reflections. Expecting Jack, she opened it without hesitation and found herself face to face with Thomas Sawyer. For a moment, shock robbed her of speech or movement. Thomas looked travel-worn and haggard, his eyes bloodshot from drinking or lack of sleep. Behind him stood one of the men who had pursued them at the river. "Hello, wife," Thomas said, his voice dangerously soft. "Imagine finding you here." Olivia tried to slam the door, but Thomas was faster, forcing it open and shoving her backward into the room. She stumbled, catching herself against the bed. "Please leave," she said, hating the tremor in her voice. "I'm not going back with you, Thomas," he laughed, a harsh sound without humor. "Not your decision to make. You're my wife, my property." "I'm not property," Olivia responded, surprising herself with the steadiness that had returned to her voice. "I'm a person, and I choose not to be with a man who locks me out to freeze, who hits me when he drinks, who treats me like less than the animals in his barn." Thomas's face darkened with rage. "You ungrateful bitch. After everything I've provided for you, provided," Olivia interrupted, a lifetime of suppressed anger finally breaking free. "You provided fear. You provided pain. You provided a life no woman should have to endure." Thomas lunged forward, hand raised to strike her. Olivia flinched but stood her ground, refusing to cower before him any longer. The blow never landed. The door crashed open and Jack was there, his expression cold with fury. In 2 strides, he crossed the room and seized Thomas by the throat, slamming him against the wall with enough force to rattle the window panes. "Touch her," Jack said, his voice terrifyingly quiet, "and it will be the last thing you ever do." The man who had accompanied Thomas reached for his gun, but Jack was faster, his own weapon appearing in his free hand as if by magic. "Don't," Jack advised, not even looking at the second man. "I won't miss at this range." The room froze in a tableau of tension, Jack pinning Thomas to the wall. Gun trained on the second man. Olivia standing with her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. "Now," Jack continued, his tone conversational despite the lethal intent behind it, "here's what's going to happen. You, Thomas Sawyer, are going to sign divorce papers releasing your wife from your marriage. Then you're going to leave this town and never seek her out again." Thomas's face had purpled from Jack's grip on his throat. When Jack loosened it slightly to allow him to speak, he spat, "I'll see you both in hell first." Jack smiled, a cold expression that contained no mirth. "That's one option. The other is that I take you outside right now and put a bullet in you for attempting to assault my client. Self-defense is taken seriously in these parts, especially when a lady's safety is involved." "Client," Thomas wheezed. "Didn't she tell you? I'm not just her traveling companion. I'm an agent of the Pinkerton Detective Agency, hired to investigate reports of abuse and ensure Mrs. Sawyer's safe passage to her relatives." The lie flowed smoothly from Jack's lips. "We have affidavits from witnesses who saw you lock her out in freezing weather, who have seen the bruises. Now, which option would you prefer? Divorce papers or a pine box?" Thomas's eyes darted between Jack and Olivia, assessing whether the threat was genuine. Whatever he saw in Jack's expression must have convinced him. "Fine," he growled. "She's not worth the trouble anyway." Jack released him, stepping back but keeping his gun trained on both men. "Owen," he called, and Olivia realized the innkeeper was standing in the doorway, watching the confrontation. "Would you be so kind as to fetch paper and ink? Mr. Sawyer has some documents to sign." Within the hour, a crude but legally binding divorce document had been drawn up, witnessed by Owen Miller and 2 other respected men from the settlement. Thomas signed it with obvious reluctance, his hand shaking either from rage or the effects of Jack's chokehold. "This is robbery," he muttered as Jack reviewed the document. "She came with a dowry. She owes me, consider whatever she brought to the marriage payment for the years of abuse," Jack interrupted coolly. "You're getting off lightly, Sawyer. Now take your friend and get out of Pine Hollow. If I see either of you again, I won't be so merciful." After Thomas and his companion had been escorted from the inn, Olivia sank onto the edge of the bed, trembling with the aftermath of tension and fear. "How did he find us?" she whispered. "Bad luck," Jack replied, holstering his gun. "Owen says they arrived just an hour before we did, asking about a couple matching our description. They were about to leave when we walked in." "The Pinkerton Detective Agency?" Olivia asked, a small smile breaking through her shock. Jack shrugged, a hint of his usual warmth returning to his expression. Seemed more intimidating than former ranch hand and occasional prospector. "Thank you," she said, the simple words utterly inadequate for what he had done. "For everything." Jack knelt before her, taking her hands in his. "Olivia, there's something I need to tell you, about Silverton and Sarah Miller's hotel." "What is it?" "I may have misled you slightly. Sarah is indeed my brother's widow, and she does run the finest hotel in Silverton, but it's not just any hotel, it's my hotel too. We're partners in the business." Olivia stared at him, confused. "You own the hotel, but you said you were looking into mining investments." "I have those too. The truth is, I'm not the drifter I may have appeared to be when we met. I came from humble beginnings, but the last 10 years have been profitable for me." "Why didn't you tell me?" Jack released her hands, standing to pace the small room. "At first, it didn't seem important. You needed help, not my life story. Then, as we traveled together, I realized I enjoyed being seen as just Jack Caldwell, not the business interests or properties I've acquired. With you, I was valued for who I am, not what I own." Olivia processed this revelation, finding that it changed nothing essential about how she viewed him. "You're still the man who saved me from freezing, who taught me chess, who held me through the night to keep me warm." Relief washed over Jack's features. "Yes, that's who I am at heart, regardless of what my financial situation might be." "So," Olivia said, a new thought occurring to her, "if I work at the hotel, I'll be working for you." "No," Jack replied firmly. "You'll be working for Sarah. She runs the place entirely. I'm just a silent partner who provides capital when needed. Your position there will be earned on your own merit, not as any kind of favor from me." Olivia nodded, relieved. The last thing she wanted was to trade one form of dependence for another, no matter how benevolent. "There's something else," she said quietly. "Something I need to say now that I'm free." Jack waited, his expression open but unreadable. "I don't know what the future holds for us," Olivia continued, finding courage in the simple fact of speaking her truth. "But I know that these past days with you have shown me what it means to be truly respected, truly cared for. Whatever happens when we reach Silverton, I want you to know that you've changed my life in ways I can never repay." Jack crossed to her then, kneeling once more before her. "There's nothing to repay, Olivia. Meeting you, helping you, it's brought something into my life that I didn't even know was missing." Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he raised a hand to her cheek. His touch was gentle, questioning. Olivia leaned into it, her eyes closing briefly at the tenderness she found there. When Jack's lips met hers, it was with the same care, the same respect he had shown her from the beginning. The kiss deepened gradually, transforming from a question into an answer, an affirmation of all that had grown between them on their journey. "I think," Jack murmured when they finally parted, "that Silverton has a lot to offer both of us." Olivia smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes and lifted years of sorrow from her heart. "I think you're right, Mr. Caldwell." The remaining journey to Silverton passed without further incident. With the horses Jack purchased in Pine Hollow, they made good time, arriving at the edge of the bustling mining town 3 days later. Silverton spread across a valley surrounded by towering mountains. Its buildings, a mix of hastily constructed shacks and more substantial structures built to last. Main Street boasted several businesses with painted signs and glass windows, clear indicators of a town transitioning from mining camp to permanent settlement. "There it is," Jack said, pointing to the largest building on the street, a 3-story structure with a wide porch and sign proclaiming it the Silver Peak Hotel. Home. As they rode toward the hotel, Olivia felt a peculiar mix of nerves and anticipation. This place represented a new beginning, a chance to build a life of her own making. A tall woman with iron gray hair swept into a neat bun emerged onto the hotel's porch as they approached. Even at a distance, Olivia could see the moment of shocked recognition on the woman's face, followed by a broad smile. "Jack Caldwell," she called, hurrying down the steps as they dismounted. "You're 3 weeks early and twice as scruffy as usual," Jack grinned, embracing the woman warmly. "Sarah Miller, still running the finest establishment in Colorado, I see. Someone has to maintain standards while you're off gallivanting," Sarah replied, her stern tone belied by the affection in her eyes. She turned her gaze to Olivia. "And who might this be?" "Olivia Sawyer," Jack introduced. "Olivia, this is Sarah Miller, the most formidable businesswoman west of the Mississippi." Sarah assessed Olivia with keen blue eyes that seemed to miss nothing. "Any friend of Jack's is welcome here, my dear, though I suspect there's quite a story behind your arrival." "There is," Olivia confirmed, "one I'd be happy to share if you're willing to hear it." Something in Olivia's tone must have communicated the gravity of that story, for Sarah's expression softened. "Come inside, both of you. You look like you could use hot baths, a decent meal, and perhaps a drop of brandy while you tell me everything." The interior of the Silver Peak Hotel was a revelation to Olivia. Having expected frontier roughness, she instead found tasteful furnishings, clean floors, and an atmosphere of ordered calm. A spacious lobby featured a polished reception desk, comfortable seating areas, and a wide staircase leading to the upper floors. Sarah showed them to adjacent rooms on the second floor, large, airy spaces with real beds, washstands with running water, and windows overlooking the town. "Get cleaned up," she instructed. "Then join me in my private parlor for dinner. Jack knows the way." Alone in her room, the first truly private space she'd had in years, Olivia was momentarily overwhelmed by the luxury of safety. No Thomas to fear, no cold night locked outside, no uncertain future stretching before her. Just clean linens, warm water, and the promise of a new beginning. After bathing and changing into the single spare dress she'd managed to bring from Pine Hollow, Olivia met Jack in the hallway. He too had transformed, his trail-worn appearance replaced by clean clothes and freshly trimmed hair and beard. "You look," he began, then seemed at a loss for words. Olivia smiled, understanding what he couldn't express. "So do you." Sarah's private parlor was a comfortable room behind the hotel's office, clearly designed as both living space and informal meeting area. A table was set for dinner, and Sarah herself served them a meal that seemed impossibly luxurious after days of trail rations: roast beef, potatoes, fresh bread, and vegetables that still retained their color and flavor. Over the meal, Jack and Olivia took turns relating the events that had brought them to Silverton. Sarah listened with minimal interruption, her expression shifting from concern to outrage to admiration as the tale unfolded. "Well," she said when they had finished, refilling their brandy glasses, "I've known Jack Caldwell for 8 years, and I've never known him to exaggerate, but if I hadn't heard this story from both of you, I might have doubted parts of it." She raised her glass in a toast. To courage, both in facing danger and in starting anew. They drank to that, and as the evening progressed, conversation turned to more practical matters. "I assume Jack mentioned I've been looking for help managing this place," Sarah said to Olivia. "The position is yours if you want it. Room and board plus a decent wage. You'd be responsible for staff scheduling, guest relations, and helping with the accounts." "He did mention it," Olivia confirmed, "and I'd be grateful for the opportunity. I don't have experience running a hotel, but I'm a quick learner." Sarah waved away her concerns. "Experience can be gained, character can't. Jack vouches for you, and that's good enough for me. Besides," she added with a wry smile, "any woman who can survive what you have and still face the world with dignity has exactly the strength this job requires." And so Olivia Sawyer began her new life in Silverton. The first weeks were a whirlwind of learning, mastering the hotel's operations, meeting the staff and regular guests, familiarizing herself with the town. Sarah proved to be a demanding but fair mentor, pushing Olivia to develop confidence in her abilities while providing guidance when needed. Jack, true to his word, maintained a respectful distance professionally. During the day, he attended to his various business interests in town, returning to the hotel in the evenings. They often shared dinner, sometimes with Sarah, sometimes just the two of them, building a friendship that grew steadily deeper, unfolding at a pace that gave Olivia time to heal from her past. Spring arrived in the mountains, bringing wildflowers to the meadows and a fresh energy to Silverton. On a rare day off from her duties at the hotel, Olivia accepted Jack's invitation to ride into the countryside. They found a peaceful spot by a small lake, spreading a blanket for a picnic lunch. The mountains reflected perfectly in the still water, creating a scene of such beauty that Olivia sat in appreciative silence for several minutes. "Happy?" Jack asked, watching her face. "Yes," she answered without hesitation. "For the first time in years, truly happy." He reached for her hand, entwining his fingers with hers. They had shared kisses and embraces over the past months, but both had tacitly agreed to move slowly, giving their relationship time to develop on its own terms. "I've been thinking," Jack said, his thumb tracing patterns on the back of her hand, "about the future." Olivia turned to face him, noting the unusual hint of nervousness in his expression. "What about it? I've purchased land outside town. 20 acres with a creek running through it, good grazing land with a view of the mountains. I'm building a house there." He paused, then continued more carefully. "I was hoping you might help me decide how it should look, how many rooms it needs, where the windows should be placed to catch the best light." Understanding dawned on Olivia. "Are you asking me to design our home, Jack Caldwell?" "I'm asking if you might consider sharing that home with me, Olivia Sawyer. As my wife, if you'll have me." Joy bubbled up within her, bright and effervescent. "Are you proposing to me beside a mountain lake with a picnic lunch?" Jack laughed, some of his nervousness dissipating. "I am." "Terribly romantic or utterly cliché, perfectly wonderful," she assured him, squeezing his hand. "And yes, Jack, yes, I would very much like to design our home and share it with you as your wife." The kiss they shared then held all the promise of the future they would build together, a future where Olivia would never again sleep in the cold, where trust and respect would form the foundation of their life together, where love would continue to grow stronger with each passing day. They were married in July, with Sarah Miller standing as witness in the small church that served Silverton's growing population. The ceremony was simple. The celebration afterward more exuberant, a party at the Silver Peak Hotel attended by the friends both had made in town. By late autumn, their house was completed, a sturdy, welcoming structure with large windows that captured both sunlight and the spectacular mountain views. Jack had insisted on spacious rooms, a wide porch wrapped around 3 sides, and a stone fireplace large enough to keep the Colorado winters at bay. Olivia had added her own touches: window seats for reading, a kitchen designed for efficiency and comfort, a study where Jack could manage his business affairs. On their first night in the new house, Jack built a fire in the hearth while Olivia arranged blankets and pillows on the floor before it. "What's this?" he asked, turning to find her sitting amidst the impromptu nest. "Our first memory here," she explained, patting the space beside her. "I thought we might start with a reminder of how far we've come." Jack settled beside her, drawing her into his arms as they watched the flames dance. "From a freezing stable to our own hearth, quite a journey. The best kind," Olivia murmured, resting her head against his shoulder. "One that ends exactly where it should." Outside, the first snow of winter began to fall, blanketing their new home in pristine white. But inside, wrapped in Jack's embrace, Olivia was perfectly, blissfully warm and would remain so for all the nights to come. As the years passed, the Caldwell home became known throughout the region for its warmth and hospitality. Jack's business ventures prospered, allowing him to focus more on the horse breeding operation he had always dreamed of establishing. Olivia continued working at the Silver Peak Hotel until the arrival of their first child, a daughter they named Caroline, after Jack's sister. 2 sons followed Thomas, named not for Olivia's ex-husband but for Jack's father, and William, after Olivia's beloved grandfather. The children grew strong and happy, raised with love and the freedom to develop their own characters and dreams. Sarah Miller remained a dear friend and honorary grandmother to the Caldwell children until her peaceful passing at age 78, leaving the Silver Peak Hotel jointly to Jack and Olivia. They managed it together, maintaining its reputation as the finest establishment in a Silverton that had grown from mining camp to prosperous town. On cold winter nights, when snow piled against the windows and wind howled across the Colorado mountains, Jack and Olivia often found themselves reminiscing about their first meeting the desperate woman in a freezing stable, the stranger who offered his coat without hesitation. "I knew even then," Jack would sometimes say, holding Olivia close beside their hearth, "that you were the strongest person I'd ever met. You just didn't know it yet yourself." And Olivia, surrounded by the home and family built on love rather than fear, would smile at the memory of those first words that had changed her life forever. "You'll sleep inside from now on." A promise kept, through all the years and all the seasons until the end of their days.